in many minds. I was in an airport bookstore. Out for many moments. Left a suitcase on the fourth floor. Cold chocolate made out of spoons. Eating super sugar crisp. I was getting used to this well. Keep your heart beating in the future. Hello everyone, you're welcome. Kindly mute your mic as you are being allowed into the room. Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to Insight 331. Our guest is here. I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes to share a profile. Kindly pay attention to our profile as it will be shared. I'm not going to be reading that profile, so you will be reading that profile yourself. All right, everyone. Good afternoon to you once again. So, Victoria, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Leshi.
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. It's good to have you on Insight.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, thank you so much for the time. And we are sincerely happy that you can spare time for us. And I'm very sure the time difference is not that convenient for you, but for the sacrifice. Thank you so, so much. Let's just go straight to
Yeah.
the essence of our meeting this afternoon. I need to also tell you that we have quite a number of people that are with us online. We have close to 22 people currently on Zoom. We have people following us on Telegram as well as on Mixler. All right, so Victoria, you're a nutritionist.
Yes.
How did you get to the field of nutrition? Was it by choice or by accident?
I would say it's both choice, and instead of accident, I would rather say divine direction. So just like any students at secondary school, I wanted to study medicine and surgery. However, I knew I wanted to do something related to food. I believe you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So however, I wanted to do something related to food, and I didn't feel like food science or food technology was something I wanted to do. So while I and my parents were looking through the brochure for College of Medicine, University of Ibadan, we discovered the course Human Nutrition. We looked at the course overview, and it sounded something more appropriate, like what I wanted to do. So I applied for MBBS as first choice. Then we still had the opportunity to have first and second choice. So MBBS as first choice, human nutrition as second choice. And well, as God will have it, I didn't get into medicine and surgery. I got into human nutrition. Even though I had the opportunity, there were suggestions around me as far I should reapply or do change of course or all of that. I just decided I found myself here and I will continue. Yes, so that's how I found myself in the nutrition.
To hear that. So you find yourself in nutrition, and then your first degree was in nutrition. So
Mhm.
what necessitated your second degree abroad?
Yes, that's a good question. Um, so I will first talk about why did I decide to study nutrition at graduate level, and I'll also talk about why did I decide to do it abroad. So going to the first point of why human nutrition again at graduate level, um, for me, I believe I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about nutrition. I felt like I graduated at the point where nutrition was just getting more interesting to me. So I really wanted to know more in nutrition. There was a specific class that triggered my interest, specifically in public health nutrition. It was a 300 level class, and the course title was public health nutrition, if I remember properly. And we were talking about nutritional issues of public health importance, iron deficiency, anemia, vitamin A deficiency, and so on. We're given a lot of statistics, what kind of interventions have been, done or implemented in Nigeria. That just sounded very interesting to me, and I felt like, oh, it feels like this is what I would like to do. So public health nutrition triggered my interest to study public health nutrition. So why did I decide to go abroad? First, I would like to mention the role of a mentor in opening up the possibility of having this kind of opportunity. So um, I have a foster father who is also a professor in a department I will not mention in UI. He's more of a pastor, father, mentor to me. He knew that I graduated with the first class, so he kind of drew me to himself. And he had been to the US previously, and he had seen the kind of opportunities that were available for students, especially international students. And he decided that he will educate his children to be able to pursue such opportunities. So that was one major influence that influenced my decision. However, going beyond that, it was also a desire to know more. It was a desire to go beyond the status quo. It was a desire to step outside my comfort zone. If University of Ibadan was the first and the best, and I already had a first class degree from UI, I could as well go abroad and be exposed to maybe better opportunities, have a world class education, and so on. So I believe those were the reasons that fueled my desire and my pursuit of career advancement abroad.
All right. Thank you for giving us that insight. So now you are abroad. So how important is knowledge acquisition abroad in your career advancement as a person? How important has it been?
Yes, thanks for that question. So first, I would like to mention the role of having a world-class education that makes you globally competitive. Like, for example, if you have a degree, especially a graduate degree from a US university, you can literally work anywhere in the world. You're not restricted to Nigeria. So that itself gives you a leverage. Also, just the opportunity to have an expanded horizon and have a global mindset. Like I have been in classes where professors who have engaged or worked in, say, conditional cash transfer programs in Mexico, or wash plus nutrition programs in Bangladesh and Kenya, or the health insurance system in Rwanda, have been in my class, and they have spoken from their own wealth of experiences, literally from all over the world. So having that opportunity to have an expanded or a broad horizon and having a global mindset, I think it's very critical, especially for professionals in the 21st century. I think one more reason is the just the opportunity to be mentored by these well-accomplished professors, not just the fact that you have them in your school, but you also have access to them. You can work with them either on research or programs or just whatever it is that you have on your plate. You can be mentored by them. You can have access to opportunities through them. Also, just the opportunity to meet people too. So I live in a place where, speaking literally now, that I have met people from literally all over the world. Yes, and that's kind of opportunity to get to know other cultures, get to meet other people, get to engage with people who live in contexts and places that are very different from yours. I think it's very priceless. Also, because many opportunities and resources are usually available in the developed world, and if you can have access to those opportunities, they may be life-changing for your career altogether. I would also say that it's more of a desire to leave your comfort zone. I mean, I had been in Nigeria all my life, and the first time I was leaving Nigeria was when I was setting out my journey to the US. So leaving your comfort zone, growing, getting to know other people, getting to live in a place that is very completely different from what you're used to. I think all those experiences are very important for anyone who is a professional.
Okay. Wow. So it's a good experience, I guess.
Yes, it is. It's not just a good experience. I would say it's a priceless
Priceless.
experience. And if you can have the opportunity, it's highly recommended.
So now that you have been abroad studying, how do you come about the choice of school that you currently attended?
Yes. So, like I earlier mentioned, I was interested in public health nutrition. So I already had a mindset of I want to study public health nutrition at the master's level. So while I was searching for schools, I was searching from that mindset that I wanted to do public health nutrition. And I'll mainly say that the shortest answer to that question is I found it online. So online search exposed me to different number of several pages. Specifically, there was one that was very helpful for me. I found a directory that was more like a compendium from the American Society for Nutrition that had a list of all the schools, by schools I mean universities, arranged by their states that offer nutrition at the graduate level, either master's or PhD. So that helped me to be able to go from one state to the other, looking from one institution to the other. And I already had the mindset of identifying programs or schools that had some form of public health nutrition as part of their curriculum or course content. So that was where I was able to identify quite a number of schools, maybe about 8 or 10 of them. I would say also that I kind of narrowed my search apart from based on what I wanted to do. I also narrowed my search because I had to write to some of those schools to confirm some of the requirements apart from what I saw on their websites. which I will later talk about as well, I decided not to write the English proficiency test. So because I had found out that it could be weighed for me, so I had to write to some of the graduate coordinators or program managers, as the case may be. And some of them told me that the English proficiency test rather could be waived for me. Some stated specifically that even if I was from Nigeria, I still had to write it. So those were eliminated. So it was like a gradual process of searching, elimination, narrowing down, and then eventually I identified at least 4 schools which I felt I wanted to apply to. I eventually applied to 2, of which UC Berkeley is one. For UC Berkeley, I discovered the public health nutrition program. I discovered that it's an MPH program, which is more professional. Then I also discovered that in between the first and second year, there is a summer internship requirement, which I felt would be very helpful for me to have some form of work experience, especially related to public health nutrition. Also, the ranking of the school. UC Berkeley is the #1 public university in the US. So I felt like, yes, I'll go for that. I also discovered, lastly, the MasterCard Foundation scholarship that works in affiliation with UC Berkeley. So those were the factors that influenced my choice of the school.
Wow, wow, wow. So there's something phenomenal that you made mention of. You talked about you knew what you wanted, and then you were not
Yes.
distracted based on what you did not want. So you just went for it. So you already knew, predetermined in your mind, the exact thing that you intend to do, and then you went for it.
Yes.
So that's phenomenal, because quite a number of students, if you ask them, what do you really want? They say anything. So you didn't really want anything. So there's something you wanted, and you went for it, and you were able to get it. But if I may
Yes.
ask, you make reference to a compendium of schools in the US. Do you mind sharing that compendium with us for the sake of participants that may be interested in following your footsteps? Do you mind sharing that with us?
Yes, I will do that. And I think I'll share that personally with you, Dr. Leshi.
All right.
I
All
will
right.
share the link with you. And then maybe just to buttress on the points that you mentioned, that's also one observation that I made, especially when I got here in the US. So when I got to the US, in if not all my classes, whenever we had to introduce ourselves as students, maybe at the first day of the class, we had to talk about our specific interests, either in nutrition or whatever course that we were studying. So, and I realized that was not the conversation that we had back home, especially in our classes. I do not remember the number of times that I had to talk about what I was interested in nutrition throughout my 4-year stay in GY. Probably it was mentioned maybe when I had to say encounter a supervisor and then, oh, let's start a conversation. What do you want to do? What are you interested in? But I think it's also a gap in helping students to be able to sizzle out, or from all your classes, or from classes that you've taken so far, from classes you've taken this semester, what exactly sparked interest in your mind? What was it that the lecturer was talking about, either from his experience or from the course content, that you think that, oh, I would like to know more about this. So I think it's both ways. It's both the students identifying themselves and also the role of maybe lecturers or mentors helping the students to be able to identify what those interest areas are and how they would like to take them forward.
Wow. All right. That's lesson for two. One for the student and one for the lecturers. So
Yes.
it's important for the student to really identify early enough what they want, and then the lecturer also to serve as a guide in ensuring that
Yes.
students be able to discover what they want. That's phenomenal. So if I may ask, Victoria, could you
Yes.
could you share with us the application process? Yeah, you talked about getting a list of schools, and then approaching them, writing them. Another thing you also mentioned, if I may also buttress on, was not all schools in the US require proficiency in English. Did I
That's
get
true.
that right?
Yes, that's true.
What's the secret to that, please?
Okay, so I will walk you through the application process, especially from my own experience. That's like telling you my story. Plus, I'll also talk about the requirements for studying abroad, especially from the US. So I will mostly be talking about my experience in the US, and that's because that's what I'm familiar with. I
Yeah.
can just extrapolate to a number of countries I may mention here and there. So I'll say my own story started post BSc, after I graduated, I talked about the influence on the role of a mentor. So towards the end of, I graduated specifically in February 2015. So towards the end of the year, I started my internship at UCH, which I know many of you are familiar with. So before I started my internship, I had already had the mindset of studying abroad is something I'd like to pursue. So I started internship, and during the course of the internship, I and a close friend of mine enrolled, who is also here in the US now on a PhD program. We enrolled in GRE tutorials. Now, the GRE is a standardized test, which is a major requirement for application to many programs in the US, most programs, I would say. So we enrolled in the tutorials, then we attended tutorials for about 6 weeks or thereabouts. I think initially we were thinking about writing the exam then, but we decided that because of the time schedule and just the amount of time we had to balance work and everything else going on in our lives at the time, we decided it would be more feasible to write it later. So NYSC started at the end of internship. And so, yes, NYSC started and I enrolled, I registered for GRE. And in between the time I registered for GRE and the time I wrote it, I kind of had some 3 months space in between. So that was enough time for me to prepare for the exam. So around that time as well, I had to search. I also had to get my transcripts. Thankfully, I had my sister who was in Ibadan because I was serving then. She was able to do the running around to get my transcripts. So I wrote GRE sometime around May, I believe. And then I had to start my application sometime in August because I was working towards, we call it the fall semester, which usually opens up around August till the deadline is usually around December. And I would like to mention also that many funding opportunities are usually available around that period. So I applied to 2 schools. I wanted to apply to more, but I mean, that was how much money I could afford because I had to pay application fees. So I applied to 2 schools, UC Berkeley included. And after NYSC, sometime in 2018, February or March, I got admission offers from both schools to which I had applied. However, from one of the schools, I didn't get any funding. But from the second school, I received a notification that I was eligible to apply for the MasterCard Foundation Scholarship, which sponsored my program. So I applied. The first round was lots of essays. I mean, lots, lots of essays. And I had a very short time frame, either 2 or 3 days to turn in those essays. I scaled through the first stage, and then the second stage was interview. So I opted for a phone interview. And I would also like to mention here that in between, while I was preparing for the interview, I reached out to scholars, current scholars who were being sponsored by MasterCard via LinkedIn. I connected with some of them. One of them at least responded, and I asked him a number of questions. How did he prepare for the interview, all of that. He sent me some of the articles or materials that he used to prepare for his own interview to me, and those were very helpful. Anyway, I did the interview, it was successful, and I got the scholarship. Now to the second points, which is what are the requirements to study abroad. So like I mentioned, you would need standardized test scores. And those are very basic, not just GRE is basic, especially if you're applying to schools in the US, in UK, in Canada, in Australia, and maybe a bunch of other countries. So it's not just for you as an international student, it's for everyone who wants to enter graduate school in those countries. It means even their citizens have to write it. So then English proficiency tests as well. Now, the US generally prefers test of English as a foreign language, that's TOEFL, while other countries, maybe the UK, may prefer IELTS. I mentioned earlier that some schools can waive it. Now, Nigeria is an English-speaking country, and some universities acknowledge the fact that students or applicants who have studied in Nigeria have studied in English. So sometimes they can decide to waive it for you altogether. Other times they would mandate that you get a letter from your university. So that's usually, I believe, from the academic department or academic affairs or something. you get a letter from them indicating that you studied at the university and all your courses were done in English language. That being said, standardized test scores are important. However, because of the current pandemic and because of the difficulty that applicants have been having to go to test centers and write these exams, some institutions have realized that and they have decided to waive those standardized test scores requirements altogether. And I think that's an opportunity. So if you are interested in going or starting something like this, you can look out for maybe schools that already have this requirements waived, which I think is a plus. That apart from standardized test scores, you also need basically your certificate, either bachelor's degree or master's degree, as the case may be. You also need to get your transcripts, you need your CV or your resume. You also need what is called the statement of purpose, which could also be referred to as motivation letter. And this is very important. It's a very important component of your application. I need to say that again. Your statement of purpose is a very important component. It summarizes who you are, why you are applying, why you are a good candidate for the program, why you're a good fit for the program you're applying to, and what your interests are specifically. Say in my own case, for example, I was interested in public health nutrition. So what were my specific interests in public health nutrition, and what also do you want to do in the future? That's talking about your career goals. What are your plans at the end of your degree? So the statement of purpose is very important. Also, the letters, you need letters of recommendation, at least 2 or 3. I would say that you should get your letters of recommendation from people who know you, who can attest to your abilities, and people whom you know will respond to emails and will be able to send the letters of recommendation on time. Because I tell you that if you need 3 letters of recommendation and you have just 2, your application is as good as incomplete and it will not even be attended to at all. So while you're sending for your requests for your recommenders or to your recommenders, you should attach your CV so that they can have a wide array of things that you have done and how they can speak to your experiences and as to why you're a good candidate for or a good fit for the program. You would also need application fees, which could range from as low as $30 or $50 to as high as $140, $150. It depends from one school to the other, it differs. So you should prepare that you would need to send in your application with some application fees. It could be waived in a few cases for international applicants. For most schools require international applicants to pay application fees. In some cases too, you may be mandated to obtain a supervisor. So you may have to reach out to professors, especially who have research that is related to what you think you want to do, who are working on interest areas. And this may also be important for seeking funding opportunities. So in case that you have to get your funding from the research that the professor is conducting, and that will have to span the whole of your training or your program, you may need to send or reach out to professors, and just basic things that you need to learn: how to write essays, how to send emails, how to follow up on emails, and how to find out as much information as possible. I already mentioned the fact that it's important, if you need help, to reach out for help. Like I said, I reached out to current students or current scholars, and the information I received was very helpful. So these are some of the requirements to study abroad.
Wow. You have given us loads of insight, loads of insight. If I can quickly recap, you talked about your ability to maximize NYC. So you were able to make your NYC period count. All right, quite a number
Yes,
of
yes.
people, they just go to NYC and then before you know it, 1 year is over and they are unable to bring anything good or anything outstanding out of NYC apart from serving. So for you, you use that period to prepare for your study abroad. That's very, very
Yes.
insightful. You also talk about speaking out and seeking for help, and you also emphasize on that. speak out and seek for help. Everyone, please, it is important for you to speak out and seek for help. I'm sure it's as a result of your ability to speak out and seek for help. That's how you're able to get the scholarship.
I believe so. Yes, that's one of the components.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And I also noticed that you leverage on those that have gone ahead of you. You got information, you obtain information from them, you synthesize the information and you make use of the information. And then you also talked about golden opportunities. I caught that golden opportunity because in these there are opportunities. So if you don't move out to get opportunities, you may not be able to get maximize those opportunities. Then the essence of statement of purpose, motivational statement is very key. It's very key. That's very fantastic. I'm very grateful for giving us this insight. But if I may ask you, Victoria, was this
Yes.
process difficult? Or how
The
easy?
answer to that question, yeah, keep going, Dr. Leshe.
Yes. So how easy was this process? Was it difficult? Was it a difficult process for you?
The answer to that question is yes, it was difficult. It was difficult because there was a lot that was involved in going through the whole process. It was not easy. That's plain,
Yeah.
and that it's good to know that it's good also to prepare your mind that if you're setting out to pursue something like this, it's not going to be easy. It will require a lot of efforts, a lot of time, a lot of intellect, a lot of money, a lot of prayers too. I believe in strongly in depending on God, because in my case, when I set out to this journey, I didn't know anything about MasterCard scholarship. I didn't know anything about UC Berkeley. You know, I was as new as anybody who didn't know anything about it. But it was while searching, I believe God led me, and I had to depend on Him. However, it took a lot of investment. It was not easy. So just like you mentioned, NYC was a time of investment for me. While many people were just having their nice time, just gallivanting around the whole place, I had to make a lot of sacrifices. I had saved some money during internship that I used and invested during NYC, and I had to believe that it would pay off eventually. So, is it easy? No. Is it gonna be easy? No. But is it worth it? Yes.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding, and it's a rewardable experience, especially when it pays off eventually. Whatever it is that I've invested in this journey is nothing compared to what I've enjoyed. So it's not easy, but it's very rewarding.
Wow. It's not easy, but rewarding. When you started the journey, you didn't set out to get the MasterCard scholarship, but you eventually got the MasterCard scholarship. That's a reward of hard work, I believe. So, Victoria, you got the admission eventually.
I did.
But to what extent do little things contributed to admission process in foreign universities? Little things, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. So a number of points come to mind talking about little things that matter for admission. First is ensuring that you are a good fit for whatever program that you're applying to. That is very important. So if, for example, in my case, I wanted to study public health nutrition, I came across while I was searching a number of programs that specified that they were specifically into, say, sports nutrition or clinical nutrition. I knew those were not my interest areas, so I didn't bother targeting those schools at all. So ensuring that you're a good fit for the program is very important. Also, work experience. I cannot overemphasize the need for you to have relevant work experience. So in my case, I had worked as a research assistant with my supervisor after graduation. I had also worked as an intern dietitian at UCH. My intern, NYSC rather, was at Rufus Polytechnic, Nutrition and Dietetics Department. There, I worked as an assistant lecturer. So all of those experiences worked together for my good. This program that I applied to had a minimum requirement of 2 years work experience. So if I didn't have that 2 years work experience, I would not even be considered in the first place for admission. So work experience is very important. Work experience as well as volunteer experience. So I know it may be very difficult to get a job, but even if it's for you to volunteer in places where you think that you'll be able to get any relevant skill, that you can speak about your statement of purpose, which you think will be relevant for your graduate career, engage in that. Also, leadership and giving back experience. The Mastercard Foundation Scholarship, for example, does not just give scholarships to those who are academically talented. That's just one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the fact that you should have demonstrated some leadership experience. You should have demonstrated the fact that you want to impact or make an impact in your community. So either you have volunteered with an NGO, or you have served in one way or the other, you know, something that is relevant to showing that you're not just willing to acquire head knowledge, but you're willing to make that impact with the knowledge that you have acquired on your community or on your country, as the case may be. If you have also obtained awards in the past, in my case, Best Graduating Student Human Nutrition, Best Graduating Student Faculty of Public Health, I had also made a presentation at NNSN conference, that's Nutrition Society of Nigeria. And through that, I got the Young Nutritionist Award. So I outlined all those awards in my CV, and I also talked about them in my statement of purpose, which were, I believe, a plus to my application. If you have made presentations, relevant presentations, or if you have published a paper, talk about it, include that in your application. Also, online courses, relevant online courses. I think this is also very important. So during my service year, so one more thing I did was to take an online course. It was organized by UNICEF and Cornell Nutrition. So the title of the course was Programming for Infants and Young Child Feeding. And since I knew that that was related to the public health nutrition that I wanted to do because I was interested in maternal and child nutrition, I decided to take it and I included that in my application as well. So if you think online courses could be relevant to you, take them and include them in your application. I would also say that having people proofread your essays also is very important. Ensure that your essays are free of grammatical errors. They are also within specified length. If you're asked to write an essay of 1,000 words, don't go above and beyond and write 2,500 words. You'll be seen as a candidate who does not listen to instructions. So ensure that you abide by whatever guidelines that you've been given for your application, and then read, review, edit your statement of purpose, have people go through it, have people share their insights, those whom you trust and those whom you know that can guide you correctly, share their insights on your essays, so that, because your essays are, just like I mentioned, it's just very fundamental to have your statement of purpose speak very well about you. I will also say lastly that it's important that you work towards deadlines. So fall semester, the deadline for fall semester in the US, like I mentioned, is usually in December or sometimes in January. So if you're working towards that, you know that you need to get your application in by the deadline that is stated specifically by your program or by your school. You should also submit a complete application. If one component of your application is missing, your application is as good as incomplete and you would not even be considered at all. So all these little things contribute to.
Wow. Wow. Little things that matters. You talked about keeping to time by meeting up with the deadline. You talk about paying attention to details. You talked about not shying away from responsibility. You also talked about volunteer experience, work experience, and being fit, making sure that you apply for a program that you are fit to do. Wow, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Victoria, for giving us this insight. So you've been outside Nigeria for some time. There are those who are in nutrition, just like our participant now, and they found passion in other fields. How flexible is career advancement abroad based on your observation?
Mm. So my understanding of that question is someone is interested in nutrition, but also wants to have some knowledge in let's say data science, for example, and you want to know how you can be able to merge both areas while having a graduate degree. Is
Yes.
that the question?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, so I would say that it's pretty flexible here, at least from my experience and just interacting with other students. Um, at the graduate level, there are a required number of courses depending on your program that you are mandated to take. And that may not necessarily fill up the whole of your schedule or the whole of your time during your program or while obtaining your degree. So after getting the required number of courses, you are also required to continue taking classes until the end of your program. And there's a minimum number of units. Here it's a minimum of 12 units per semester. So whatever you use to fill up that number of units that is required for you to take is left to you. It's up to you to determine that. So it's really flexible. You're outside of your mandated courses or elective, outside of your compulsory courses rather, you're free to go literally anywhere on campus to any of the schools. You want to take a class in a school of business, you want to take a class in the School of Engineering, that's your business. Go ahead. Make sure you take classes that fit in with the number of units, and also graduate level classes too. So in my case, for example, I've taken a French class here. That's completely outside nutrition, right? But I've taken a French class. I've also taken classes in maternal health, women's health, gender empowerment, all those things, not directly related to nutrition. I also know a friend of mine who is in public health, but she has taken many classes in data science, in artificial intelligence, technology, all of those. So it's very possible for you to engage in some of the classes or interests that you have outside of your core course.
Yeah. Thank you. So you make reference to some of your friends over there. From your experience, kindly share with us how are students being engaged over there in your school? The engagement of students.
So I believe you're talking about engagements of students
Exactly.
like outside of classes.
Yes, outside of classes and at the same time within the school environment.
Mm. Okay, so many points come to mind in response to that question. First, I'll talk about outside of classes and then within classes. So outside of classes, I would say that depending on the location of your school, so UC Berkeley, for example, is located in the Bay Area in California, and that's like the hub of entrepreneurship, innovation, technology, all of those. So there are many events that usually happen during the course of the semester, either within the campus or outside the campus in the area. So a lot of events happen like all through the semester, and you are free to RSVP for any of these events if you can get in and attend these events. In my case, I participated in Berkeley has Africa Business Forum that was organized by the business school here on campus. And because of how interesting it was, I decided to sign up the next year to participate in planning the next event. Unfortunately, it couldn't happen this year though, because of the pandemic. We had to do some online version. So there are many opportunities for students to engage in areas of interest outside their core courses. There are many student associations, many student clubs, many student societies, many events happening both on campus and outside of campus. So I would just say that there are more things to do than you as a student can accommodate on your schedule. Yeah, that's the reality.
Yeah.
So talking about engagement in the class, there are a number of opportunities that usually come up during the course of the semester. So sometimes professors could have research opportunities for research assistants. Students work with them as research assistants. Sometimes it could be working as a teaching assistant. Graduate students usually have those opportunities. Engaging in class, I'm also thinking about it in terms of how you engage or participate in your classes. So here it's very different from the system in Nigeria in terms of how much work you need to put into your classes. Now in Nigeria, you go to class, the lecturer literally pours into you. You ask one or two questions at the end of the class, and that's it. You probably pile up your notes till 2 weeks to the exam, and you cram and pour. Here, it's a very different ball game. You just can't afford to do that. In actual fact, you have to read tons of articles before going to class. So you're already going to the class with the mindset of, I'm going to discuss what I've read so far, what I've learned so far. So you will not necessarily be talking about what you're supposed to have read, because you're supposed to come to class to engage with your classmates, to engage with the material, to engage with the professor. And that's also one very key part of participation in class. And that's a very strong part of your grades as well. So you're not just going to class, keeping short. No, you can't afford to do that. You should have read extensively before coming to class, and you come to class with the mind of engaging with your professor, engaging with your classmates, coming on, this is what I think based on what I read. You know, it's based on active participation in the class.
Wow. Wow. So in summary, there is student-university engagement, there is student-student engagement, there is student-professor engagement.
Yes.
If I can summarize that in that way. Wow.
Yes, that's a good summary.
Yes. So, Victoria.
Yes.
You study here and you also study over there. Can you tell us about the academic environment? Specifically, the academic environment, the classroom environment, and how it affects academic performance?
That's a good question too. So let me quickly say that if you are planning to study abroad, just know for sure that you are coming out of your comfort zone and you're coming to grow, to stretch and to be stretched. Because like I mentioned, it's a very different ball game here entirely. The academic environment here is quite fast paced compared to Nigeria. There is a lot to learn within a short time frame. You know, when I first resumed in my classes, I felt like we were going like at the speed of light because we're just covering a lot of material within a short time frame. I remember mentioning to a friend of mine that, you know, everything I've learned in one semester is like the equivalent of what I get to learn in maybe 2 or 3 years of the whole of my undergraduate experience. That's to show you that there is a lot to learn and a lot to cover within a short time frame. You also get to engage in a lot of activities during the course of the semester, as opposed to in UI, for example, where you just write a final exam for a class. Here, you do midterms, you work on papers, you work on projects, you work on presentations, you work on group work. In each of your classes that you're taking, and you could have 4 or 5 of those classes during the semester, you can imagine having to combine all of that in one semester, and you're also covering a lot of things during the semester. It's very intense. That's to mention. Like I also talked about, you need to engage and participate in class too, and express your opinions and be very confident about that. Now, in my case, I had to adjust to that because that was not something I was familiar with coming from UI. I was literally mute in my classes in UI. But here, I had to learn to engage and participate in the class. I also had to be fine with being maybe even the only Black person in some classes or in some spaces altogether. The grading system here is very different. Instead of a 70 for an A in UI, it's a 90 for an A. So it means that you have to work extra hard to get the kind of results that you're getting in Nigeria. But I would say that the resources are available. There is electricity 24/7. There is internet access, 24/7. You have e-library. There are also libraries scattered across campus. And by virtue of you being a student, you can have access to any of those libraries. So there are resources. You can also have access to your professors. So instead of, like is the case in Nigeria, the professor or the lecturer teaches you, and well, if you don't understand, go discuss that among your classmates. That's your business. Here, the professors are accessible. You can walk up to them. They have something they call office hours. That's some amount of time slots that they have created in their schedule. That's the professors, where students can sign up and walk up to them in their offices and just talk to them about literally anything, but specifically about the course content. Oh, I didn't understand what you meant by this in class. Can you re-explain it to me? So I think you can also have what we call teaching assistants here, where there are graduate students that are attached to specific classes that you're taking and they are working with the professor. So if, for example, the professor explains it, you don't understand, you can also work up to teaching assistants to explain it to you. So I would say that it also depends on you as a student. There are resources available. There's a lot of work to do. It depends on you knowing how to harness all the resources that you have at your disposal and learn how to manage your time. That's one key thing I also had to learn here, time management, how to manage your time and work within the amount of resources you have and be able to excel. So the academic environment both depends on the system, academic system, different from that of Nigeria, the resources that are available, and then what you have to learn and how you have to make all those things work for your own success.
Wow. Thank you for that insight. Victoria, what can you say about
Yes.
your foundation in nutrition? How did that assisted you or helped you in your academic performance over there? What was your experience like? There are some people that when they find themselves in certain environment, they might feel they are not eligible enough or they are not good enough. What's your own experience like?
Mm, that's another good question. So I would say, from my experience, that my training in human nutrition, University of Berkeley, gave me a very strong foundation in terms of the content of basic nutrition concepts. And when I arrived here, I could compete favorably with my classmates regarding basic nutrition concepts. So I would say that UI gave me a very strong foundation to be able to go to anywhere I wanted in the world and compete favorably with whoever from any part of the world. Okay, that being said, I would say that there were some gaps, just similar to some things that I already mentioned, some gaps in just the educational or just the academic system in Nigeria compared to what we have here in the US. So the idea of participating in class is one very strong point that I think was not very encouraged back home, where we were just in class to receive information from the lecturers, as opposed to here where we are supposed to, there is one thing that reviewers also look for when they're looking for applicants, is the fact that they want you to come from your own background, your own experience, and bring all of those to class and talk about, in talking about this topic, while I was working at UCH, for example, while I was doing my internship there, I came across, maybe renal conditions and maybe the diet therapy of this and that, or we are talking about a situation in the US, and I come from my own perspective and say, that's not necessarily the case in Nigeria. In Nigeria, this and this and that are the case. So I think that mindset of coming from your own background, coming from your own experience, and bringing that sense of diversity to your class is also very important. So yes, UI gave me a strong background, but there were very many things I had to adjust to and adapt to because of a new system I found myself in. But yes, there is a tendency, especially when you find that you do not match up at the beginning with your classmates in some of those areas, there is a tendency to think that you're inferior, but you also need to work on yourself in that area as well, such that imposter syndrome will not make you feel inferior, but you will rather work double hard to prove that in the first place, you got into that school, you were admitted on the same level ground with your other classmates, so you have no reason to feel inferior. However, on the other end, those areas that you think that you're not at par with your classmates or with your colleagues, you work on them and you build your confidence over time.
Wow. Thank you so much. You shared earlier about your scholarship experience or funding experience. But I want
Yes.
you to buttress on this particular view. I really want to hear your view. because many people feel it is very expensive to study abroad. Therefore, they never make any attempt to do so. All right. And they feel that studying abroad is only for the rich and for the extremely brilliant. What's your view
Mm.
on this?
Okay, let me first put out a disclaimer. You don't have to be rich to study abroad. Whoever knows Victoria very well will know that she was not born with a silver spoon. No. In reality, funding opportunities are available to people who are economically disadvantaged. And that was one major criteria for the MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program. The fact that people or students or applicants are academically talented, but they did not necessarily have the means to be able to further their education, especially to have a world-class education. So I would say that you should first get to know what kind of funding opportunities are available. Don't write off yourself as I am not from a rich family or I'm not from a wealthy family and therefore I cannot do it. No. Instead of that, go and find out, search. In my case, I did not know anything about MasterCard until I started searching. Yes, so search online. Let Google be your friend on this journey. It's very important. Like, I feel like saying that again. Let Google be your friend. There are a lot of resources that people are not aware of. And it's when you are aware of something that you know how to target it. So first, be aware of the kind of funding opportunities that are available. That said, in the US, there are different kinds of funding opportunities available at graduate level, especially to international students. Scholarships or fellowships like the MasterCard Foundation scholarship that sponsored my program are usually very few and also very competitive. They usually have different eligibility criteria. In some cases, once you apply to your program, just that application is enough to determine if you're eligible for fellowships or scholarships that are available in collaboration either with the school or the department. So in my case, for example, I had found out about MasterCard scholarship. However, I had to apply to the program, my public health nutrition program first. And it was the program that recommended me to the MasterCard Foundation as being an eligible applicant. So after I had received my offer of admission from the school, it was after then that MasterCard Foundation reached out to me and said, based on whatever criteria, you're eligible to apply for this scholarship. So that's usually the case for scholarships. Sometimes it's mostly merit-based, and then you need to meet some eligibility criteria as well. But majority of the funding opportunities are available, especially in the US, are in form of assistantships. Now, it could be in two forms, either teaching assistantship or research assistantship. So teaching assistants or research assistants simply means that you work for a specified number of hours in the week. It's a maximum of 20 hours for international students. And by virtue of you working either with a professor or for the department or for the school, you get some expenses of yours covered. So it covers, most times covers your full tuition, covers health insurance. It also provides some living expenses that are at par with what is obtainable in the area that you would live in. So that's the majority. Assistantships are the major source of funding for graduate students in the US. That said as well, the MasterCard scholarship, I will just talk briefly about it. It's a comprehensive form of scholarship that covers everything, literally everything, from the transport fare to your to the embassy, to your visa expenses, to your airfare to your school, full tuition, housing, health insurance, monthly stipends. MasterCard scholarship covers everything. Now they usually have a lot of eligibility criteria, and they work in partnership with specific universities in the US, in Canada, in UK, and in some African countries like South Africa. And they're specifically for students who are academically talented, economically disadvantaged, have demonstrated leadership potential, from students from sub-Saharan African countries, of which Nigeria is one. So you will have to find out what schools does MasterCard scholarship work with or is affiliated with if you're interested in applying for it, and what schools they work with, and what their eligibility criteria are, and how to apply for it, because it's more of a case-by-case basis. So the system in UC Berkeley is different from the system of application in University of British Columbia in Canada. MasterCard is also there. So just get the information, I would say, and don't write off yourself as not being eligible because you're not from a rich family. Talking about being exceptional, being an exceptional student, well, if you are still a student in school, give it all it takes to have the highest CGPA that you can come out with as possible. However, if you already have, if you graduated and you already have your degree, you came out with a 2.1, or you came out with a 2.2, however it is, don't write off yourself as well. I do know that there are scholarships that specifically state that they are only for first-class graduates. And when that has already been stated, don't stress yourself with those ones. Rather, go for those ones that do not have such requirements. And I tell you that you do not necessarily have to graduate with a first class before you can have access to either scholarships or assistantship opportunities. Just get to know the information available and work accordingly. That's the summary.
Thank you so much for this insight. I'm very delighted that you are sharing this with us. In summary, one of the things I've learned from what you have said is that most times admission precedes scholarship or funding opportunities. So it's not that because I don't have funding, I cannot study abroad. And then we should not write off ourselves. We should just push. And we don't necessarily have to finish with first class or 2.1 before you can study abroad. That's very exciting. I mean, I'm very grateful for giving us that kind of insight. If I may ask,
Yeah.
before we call it a day, Victoria, there are those who are not willing or who are not ready to further their education. And based on your experience abroad, how do you think students and graduates can better position themselves for opportunity back home in Nigeria?
Okay, let me quickly harness a point from what you summarized. Sometimes you may have to apply to the program and to the funding opportunity around the same time. So as you're applying for the program, you're also applying for the assistantship. And in other cases, you might have obtained the admission first before you were given the privilege to apply for it. So I would say it's a case-by-case basis. Know how it operates in your program of interests or your school of interest, and work according to the guidelines. I would say also in that area that if you are unclear as per how to go about it, there are usually contact addresses or contact people that you can reach out to, whose emails are usually displayed on the website of the schools or the program, that you can ask questions. Oh, are assistantship opportunities available? Oh, I found out about this. Can you tell me this further? And they're usually very willing to give information to applicants. Okay, so the question that you asked, for those who may not necessarily be interested in studying abroad, a few points come to mind as regards positioning yourself for better opportunities here in Nigeria. First, I would say maximize work, internship, or volunteer experiences. You can never tell the kind of opportunities that will open up to you in a place that you're working, or having an internship, or just volunteering. It could just be an interest area that will develop and launch your career and say, oh, I didn't know this was existing. I'll give you an example. I had my internship, summer internship. That was in between the first and second year of my program at Save the Children, just like was displayed. And while I was there, so I went there with the mind of, oh, I want to do public health nutrition. Let me know what's going on in Nigeria. And while I was there, my supervisor told me, there's a training going on. You can just attend. So I attended the training. It was about sexual and reproductive health and child marriage in Nigeria. It was while I was attending that training, my mind was open to, possibilities and the reality of some of the issues that I never had contact with, talking about the prevalence of child marriage in Nigeria and things like that. It was like, ooh, wow, I didn't know this was an issue. So I remember discussing that when I returned for the second year of my program with a friend of mine. I was like, during my internship, I got to know about this, and that. Anyway, I was seeking research assistant opportunities around that time, and she got to know about a research assistant opportunity for a child marriage research project that was ongoing. And she was like, oh, Victoria, you may be interested in this based on what you told me during your summer internship opportunity. I got the job. Um, just to say it that way. So I would say just maximize any opportunity you have. Don't look down on what you have currently as, it's something small. I've not gotten my dream job yet. Maximize any opportunity that you have. It's very important. Also, join professional bodies within and outside Nigeria. NSN is one you can join. Outside Nigeria, American Society for Nutrition is one. If you are specifically interested in nutrition, join those professional bodies to get exposed to issues outside of Nigeria and also to meet people outside Nigeria. You can also use that as a leverage to attend conferences outside Nigeria. Now, COVID-19, the pandemic has made a lot of in-person conferences to be suspended altogether. And instead of in-person conferences, you have online conferences. ASN organized one of recent. So you can have those opportunities to meet people and to get exposed to what people are doing as well. Also network with people within who work in organizations of interest, either in person or virtually. So you can have access to them in person, fine. Network, build those relationships and connections with them. Let them know that you're seeking opportunities that could be available to you in your interest areas or in organizations of interest. Also via LinkedIn too. It's also very important. Then I will also advise that you conduct informational interviews. That was one key thing that I learned when I got here. And informational interviews simply means, just from the word information, you want to derive insider information or in-person or insider view or information from someone who is working in a place where you probably would like to work, or you just want to know what this person is doing. So people generally tend to love to talk about what they're doing at their jobs or at their organizations. So you want to come with a mindset of, I just want to learn. I just want to know what you're doing. Is this any way related to nutrition? Is this any way related to this issue that I'm interested in? Just indicating that interest is very important to build that relationship and connection, and let them know that you are also open to opportunities as much as possible. I will also say keep engaging in interest areas, either via attending conferences or participating in online events or taking online classes. Personal branding is also very important. If you want to be known as a professional and you want to, be recognized as that, personal branding, especially online via professional outlets like LinkedIn, is also very important. So I would say maximize every opportunity that you have within your disposal.
Wow, you just answered my next question, which is focused on secret of successful career advancements abroad. I've been able to also pen down a few of those things that you made mention. You talked about volunteering, you talked about networking, you talked about identifying with professional organization. You make reference to conducting informational interview, as well as being open-minded. You also make reference to engagement, that we need to engage more, as well as personal branding. I mean, that personal branding is the wow. Personal branding. Many of us, when we check our Facebook page or Instagram account or LinkedIn account, it goes a long way to define who we really are. We are actually not really doing well in terms of personal branding. And I believe so many people on the platform currently are getting insight from our conversation today. Thank you so much, Victoria. Before we release you, or we open the floor for questions from our participants, what's your view on the future of nutrition, Victoria?
My view on the future of nutrition. So I believe that question can be answered from many different perspectives. But from my perspective as a public health nutritionist, I would say that nutrition will continue to be important, especially as the world is generally looking at nutrition as a solution in terms of the preventive aspects rather than curative. Um, because of the challenges of the 21st century, the challenges of overweight, obesity, non-communicable diseases that are already big issues in the developed world, and are also rising issues in developing countries, of which Nigeria is one, and then many other countries in Africa. I would just say generally that Africa is just slowly beginning to realize the impacts, both the prevalence of obesity and NCDs and the impact of that on the healthcare system. So I would say that nutrition will continue to be important. However, nutritionists are the ones who will be able to come with whatever skills, whatever exposures, whatever critical thinking skills and problem solving skills to address some of these issues, while also looking at other issues beyond the issue of nutrition. So issues around social determinants of health and how that influences what food choices people make. Also focusing on like sustainable diets, how to ensure that we have food and nutrition security and we do not necessarily compromise the health of our environment. Also factoring in the issues of climate change and just global issues that are occurring all around us. So I would say that nutrition will continue to evolve based on the issues that we confront. The pandemic, for example, has already introduced a new normal to our world. So we need to think about how we want to address some of these issues while not necessarily creating more issues. So a lot of critical thinking, a lot of skills, problem solving, a lot of working together, not just in silos, but working together, yes, from different angles, bringing different perspectives and merging them. I believe that we can also go further in policies, nutrition policies, especially in Nigeria, we have a long way to go. So nutrition policies that will address some of these issues. So that's what I see as a public health nutritionist for the future of nutrition.
Yes, that's so insightful. Um, in my last question, before the preceding question, where I summarize some of those things that you mentioned, on I make reference to them as secret of successful academic advancement abroad. Do you have any additional things that you think are secrets of successful career advancement abroad? Do you, apart from those that you mentioned um, volunteering, networking, identifying with professional organization. You made mention of informational interview, conduction of informational interviews, being open-minded, engaging, and personal branding. Are there new things or additional things that you feel that you should also contribute to successful sojourn abroad?
I'll just summarize that under 3 points. First is targeting, the second is timing, and the last is tenacity. Targeting, you need to be informed of what opportunities are available and how to target them. Seek and you will find. There is no shortcut to that. Timing, know when to get required documents. If you need to get your international passports, if you need to, write standardized tests, all of those, know the time frame, know the application deadlines that you're working towards and plan accordingly. Generally, you should be able to plan for 12 to 18 months ahead of the commencement of your program abroad. So that's a lot of time for you to get in anything that you need to get. So timing is very important. And lastly, be persistent, tenacity. You will get rejections in some places. That's very normal. However, don't be discouraged, keep pushing. A friend of mine that we applied together, a very close friend, also in human nutrition, currently on a PhD program. We applied together. She applied to some schools the first time. She got rejected in all the programs that she applied to. She reapplied the following year, and now she's on a PhD program, meaning that she did not have to do a master's program altogether. So she even got something better. So don't be discouraged, don't give up, rather be persistent. And I would say it's worth the investment. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much. Guys, if you have questions, please feel free to drop in your questions for our guests in the chat room so that we'll be able to ask the questions. Thank you so much, Victoria. There's something you just made mention of now that many people are not aware of, and that is at times you don't have to do masters before you do PhD abroad. There are
That's
people
true.
that have admission to study for PhD straight with just BSc, and you just
Yes.
attest to that. And thank you so much for giving us that insight. And thank you for giving us that the three T,
Mm-hmm.
secret of successful academic advancement abroad. The three T. I call it three T: targeting,
Yes, there's
timing,
yes.
and tenacity. Thank you so much, Victoria. We're going to be asking.
Dr. Leslie, can I say something quickly?
Yes, please do.
So 2 points also come to mind talking about this journey. Um, so I would first want to acknowledge the role of this kind of platform in giving people access to information. Dr. Leslie, I want to openly commend you that you are doing a great job. I wish we had this when we were students. Life would have been a lot easier. It felt like we had to go like the harder way to get all the information that we needed. But if we had had something like this, our lives would have been easier. So students or alumni who are participating in these events, please maximize the access to information that you have. It's priceless, I tell you, it is. And also just to mention that if you heard Victoria's story and you did not hear the part that Victoria had everything and she had God, that's very incomplete. So dependence on God is very key. I know this is not a religious platform, but I also need to mention the fact that God is the one that guides the way to whatever resources are available that have been reserved for you. So dependence on God is very key.
Wow. Thank you so much, Victoria. So questions are coming in. Um, Maybe I should just give you a few seconds to grab your coffee. Oh, we don't need to take a coffee. Just take a water now. Exactly. All right. So that catch your breath. Questions are coming in, and then while we are getting those questions, maybe I should also ask you, Victoria. You are done with your program.
I am.
Are you coming back home?
Hmm. That's a golden question.
Golden question.
It's a golden question. Okay, I will answer that question not directly, but indirectly. So, I am interested in issues around nutrition in sub-Saharan African countries generally. And I think some of my work, even during my MPH program, have revolved around that. So I would say that I am interested in letting my career revolve around some of these issues in sub-Saharan African countries. And Nigeria, for me, could just be an entry point to that. So I believe that I was trained strongly because I need to be involved in making some of the impacts or desired changes that I desire, both in Nigeria and the continent. So Nigeria could just be an entry point for that. So am I coming to Nigeria? Maybe, maybe not. It all depends.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that sincere response to the question. I have a question here, and I'll just read the way the person sent the question. He said, could you please make a list of the write-ups or essay one needs to prepare to write? I think you've answered that question, but let me read it again, because the person said that you mentioned statement of purpose. Is that what you call the CV? In other words, to differentiate between CV
Mm,
and statement of purpose. Then thirdly,
okay.
what about research proposal? Did you have to write research proposal before you apply for your program? So there are like three questions in one. So three questions. Let me repeat again. The person wants to know whether you made a list of, the person is requesting if you can make a list of all the write-ups or essay one needs to prepare to write. What is the scope of that write-up? What is the objective of that write-up? What does that write-up talk about? Then you mention
Okay.
statement of purpose. So the person wants you to also differentiate between, if there's difference between statement of purpose and a CV, as well as, is it important for you to write research proposal before you process your admission? That's the first question. I don't know that you can clearly attend to that, sir. Ma.
Yes. So talking about the essays that you would need, I think that also ties into the next question of differentiating between the CV and statement of purpose. So the CV just talks about, I mean, it's a normal CV, your academic achievements, your experiences, work experiences, and other extracurricular activities, your skills that you have acquired over time, all of those. Those are like bullet points, lists, 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 and it should not usually not be beyond 2 pages, I believe. That's your CV. But the statement of purpose is an essay. Statement of purpose or motivation letter is an essay that, okay, so I have something written out here and I think I'll just read it out. So the components of the statement of purpose, what do you have in the statement of purpose? First, you introduce yourself, your interests, your motivations, you summarize your previous undergraduate or graduate level, as the case may be, career or experiences, then you discuss the relevance of all that you have learned to maybe what you're doing now and what you want to do in the future. You elaborate on your academic interests for the program that you are applying to, and then you tie that to your long-term career goals, how you want to apply the knowledge that you intend to gain from your from this program that you're applying to. So the statement of purpose kind of goes beyond your CV to write in sentences who you are, what your interests are, how you have worked around your interests previously before your application, why you think you're interested in what you're interested in, and what your long-term career goals are. Generally, statement of purpose should not exceed 2 pages. Sometimes the programs that you're applying to or the graduate school could give a maximum length of maybe 1,000 words or 750 words, as the case may be. And sometimes they don't. So you are the one to determine that, oh, you should not exceed 1.5 pages, maybe double space, 12 points fonts. So that's that for the statement of purpose. The essays that you have to write, statement of purpose is one of the essays. In reality, for the major, it's like a major component of your application. And then it's usually it could be the only essay you get to write for your application for the program that you're applying to. However, if you are applying for funding opportunities, you may need to write other essays. So that is where the issue of other essays come into play here. For the MasterCard scholarship that I applied to, for example, there were many questions around what I wanted to do and how that tied into the focus of the scholarship. So the scholarship, for example, is interested in building professionals or students from sub-Saharan Africa who will like transform the continent, bring about social economic change for Africa. So there were questions around how do you think that what you're studying will bring about, say, economic prosperity in Africa, for example, or how do you see that transforming your continent? You know, just different essays based on the funding opportunity that you're applying to. So I would say that the statement of purpose could be the major essay that you would write for your application, and I would say you should focus and concentrate on that and give it your best shot. However, for funding opportunities, you may need to write other essays depending on what the essay prompts are. Looking at the question of the research proposal, so I didn't have to write any research proposal for my program. I would say that it depends on the program. Some programs are mostly just research-based. So if you're applying for a research-based master's program, for example, you may be required to present a research proposal as part of your application. If you're also applying to PhD programs, maybe not all programs mandate you to have a research proposal. I know schools in the UK generally tend to have that requirement, but in the US, maybe not. It all depends. So know what is the requirement, know if you need to write it, and prepare accordingly.
All right, thank you so much. There's another question here. Well, apparently, I think the person just wants you to clarify difference between community nutrition and public health nutrition. The question reads thus: is community nutrition taken in your school? Is it a separate
Mm.
course you apply for? What is the difference between community nutrition and public health nutrition? I know your program is public health nutrition, all right, but the person really want you to clarify the
Okay, I can't
community
hear you
aspect.
again, Dr. Leshe.
All right, can you hear me now? All right, let me repeat the question again. So the person who want to know the difference between
Yeah.
community nutrition taken in your school, all right, difference between community nutrition and public health nutrition. You know, your program is public health nutrition. So then there's community nutrition as a course. So what is different between the two, please?
Okay, to quickly answer that, I think community nutrition is a branch of public health nutrition. So public health nutrition generally deals with nutrition for communities, for populations, not just for individuals. And that's why it tends to be more preventive in approach rather than curative. So community nutrition could specify, for example, we are working with lactating mothers, and therefore we are going to focus in on lactating mothers. How do we want to encourage, say, exclusive breastfeeding within this community? How do we want to, is it nutrition education that they need? Is it maybe supporting them with the use of lactation consultants, all of that? I think public health nutrition, generally looks at the overall or the broader picture, the broader perspective. So I'm looking at this in terms of what we call the socio-ecological model, for example. You want to look at not just how individuals behave in terms of their relationship with food, but you want to look at maybe there could be some influences in their family networks that are determining what they eat. You also want to look at the community and look at, oh, is it because that there is no park, there are no parks, or there are no places where people can play, that's why they cannot get live physical activities? You also want to look at the broader political perspective and say, so what policies can we put in place to ensure that people are eating right and people are, engaging in healthy lifestyle and all of that. So they are kind of intertwined. It's just that community nutrition tends to focus specifically on specific communities, but public health nutrition tends to look broadly. Yeah, it's more broad.
Okay.
Yeah, and in my school, UC Berkeley, public health nutrition falls under the division of community health sciences. So public health nutrition exists under that division, and you also get to take classes with other areas in community health, so that you can have all those perspectives to address whatever issues you're interested in. So community nutrition does not exist as a course in UC Berkeley, but public health nutrition does exist.
All right, thank you so much. There's another question here. Though you've answered the question, perhaps maybe the person wanted to expatiate more. The person wants to know whether the difference between GRE, IELTS, and TOEFL. GRE, IELTS, and TOEFL.
Okay, so the three exams or tests are standardized tests. They can be taken, I think, anywhere in the world, right? They are standard based on whatever criteria, and you're taking the same tests, I think, on the same day or around the same period with many other people around the world. So it's not just localized to Nigeria. GRE is called the Graduate Record Examination. It's a standardized test, just like I mentioned, that is required for graduate application or graduate study in the US and many other countries. So the GRE usually has three components of the exam. The first one is verbal reasoning, the second is quantitative, and the third is analytical writing. So now, depending on the type of program, I will assume that majority of those who are attending this event, they are nutritionists. You tend to, some programs, if it's in engineering, for example, they prefer that you have very high scores on the quantitative aspects. And while some other programs in nutrition just think you should just have high scores generally, not specific to a particular component of the exam. Like, so the GRE is one major way that schools used to assess if you excel in graduate school or not. That's why it's good to target a very high score when you're planning to write a GRE. The TOEFL or IELTS, TOEFL I know stands for Test of English as a Foreign Language. IELTS, I'm not sure what it means. Sorry, you need to find out. But both of them are English proficiency tests, especially for those who are from countries where English is not the first language. Nigeria is in Western Africa, and most of Western Africa, for example, most of Western Africa is Francophone, not Anglophone. But Nigeria is recognized generally to be an English-speaking country. But some countries and some universities do not necessarily acknowledge that. So by virtue of you being from Nigeria, you may need to prove that you can not just speak English, but you can actually use English to learn in your graduate field or during your graduate program. And therefore, you will need to be able to prove that with your English proficiency test score, which is either TOEFL or IELTS. Like I mentioned, I didn't have to write TOEFL because I had confirmed from the programs I was applying to, and they had told me that because I was from Nigeria, they know that I did my undergraduate program in English language, and therefore they would weigh the English proficiency test for me. And just also talking about English proficiency, if you're also planning to work as maybe a teaching assistant in the US, even if you didn't write TOEFL initially, you may be mandated to write it because there's some level, just on some standard level of English proficiency that for you to be able to teach their students, you may need to have it. So that's the difference between GRE as, well, I didn't talk about the third component of, anyway, it's just fine. That's the difference between the GRE and TOEFL and IELTS. So GRE stands on one end.
Yeah.
You need it, except if it is waived. TOEFL on the other end is needed to show that you're proficient in the use of English language, TOEFL or IELTS. And it could be waived for you, it just depends.
Yeah, I often refer to GRE like our jam.
Yes, something like
something
that.
like our jam. So, but not all schools make use of the jam for their own admission.
True.
Thank you so much. There's a question here that I just wanted to run through. Then I'll just see whether we have anybody who want to ask question directly to you. How do I get an internship placement in Nigeria? What do I need to apply for an internship in Nigeria? And lastly, can I do my internship abroad? 3 in 1. Thank God you have done your internship in Nigeria, Victoria. And you've also been abroad too to see how things are being done. So I repeat the question. How do I get an internship placement in Nigeria? What do I need to apply for an internship in Nigeria? And lastly, can I do my internship abroad?
What do I need? Okay. So to go to the first question of how you can have an access to an internship opportunity in Nigeria, I would say there are many ways of getting access to an internship opportunity. In the first place, you need to know what kind of internship you want to do and what your interests are and what organizations have all of those. So in my case, I was studying public health nutrition. So I wanted to get to work with organizations that were working around programs or interventions to address nutritional issues in Nigeria. So I would say that get to know what organizations, that's number one, very key. Get to know what organizations are doing the kind of work that you like to see being done or the kind of work you like to engage in or with. And then you can find out their websites online, get to know what information is available. Some of them could display the opportunities that they have available for interns. Some of them would talk about maybe the remuneration for interns. Some of them could be paid, some could be unpaid. So get to know the information on the website. You can also have the contacts of just people you can reach out within an organization to ask for information. That being said, that's usually a longer route. What usually happens is, I will not say what usually happens, but I will say that a shorter route around that is build your network. I need to emphasize on that. Build your network. Now, you have your lecturers who will usually have worked in collaboration with people who are working in these places. Therefore, you can leverage the fact that you know a lecturer who has engaged with A, B, or C in A, B, or C organizations. Therefore, you can walk up to them and say, I'm looking for an internship opportunity in ABC organizations. Do you have any network there who you can recommend me to? That was something that I did in my case. That was how I got my own internship opportunity. I would also say that you can maximize online networking platforms like LinkedIn. I remember while I was searching for an internship opportunity that I reached out to, I think he's the CEO of one health organization in Kenya, because I was just thinking Africa then. And then I introduced myself to him, told him about my interests. I was looking out for some internship opportunities and everything. And he literally told me that he was willing to place me anywhere that I wanted within the organization. I just needed to get the funding for it. And that was like a blank check in my case, right? This is someone I had never met before. I just connected via LinkedIn, indicated interest in his work, told him about my interests, what I was looking forward to, and things like that. And he just opened up the internship opportunity for me, like blank, like that. So I would say maximize your personal networks. If you also have, say, friends or colleagues or people who are ahead of you who are working in these organizations, build the relationship with them. Let them know that you're seeking these opportunities. There are very many ways that you can get an internship opportunity, but I would say that personal network is also very key. So what do you need? You need to know what you're interested in and what the organization that you're thinking about is doing and how you can pull those interests together. Sometimes you may be asked to apply just to make things formal. So you need your CV or your resume. I'm not sure if they would request for transcripts, but if they do, then you need to present that. You may also have to write something similar to a statement, just what you're looking forward to benefit from the internship. Yeah, and then seeking internship opportunity abroad. I'll say I know very little about this, but I wouldn't say it's not possible. I would just say that you should find out if it's possible and how to go about it.
All right. Thank you, Victoria, for this insight. There's someone that want to ask a question from you directly. Emmanuel, can you please ask your question? You've been raising your hand. Unmute your mic and ask your question, Emmanuel.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Yeah, thank you for the inspirational talk, Victoria. I really gained a lot. What I wanted to ask is this: what was the score in GRE for UC Berkeley to accept you and recommend you for the master's card scholarship? Like, what's the recommended score and what's the score? That's actually what I wanted to ask.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks,
So
Manuel, for the question.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I had a question. So I had 304 out of 340 for my GRE. So like I said earlier, there were three components of GRE, or there are three components of GRE. There is the quantitative and the verbal and analytical writing. So I had 152 on both quantitative and verbal reasoning. That adds up to 304.
All right.
3.5. Now, sorry to speak longer on this, Dr. Leshi, but I would say that every part of your components or every component of your application is very important. So you may not necessarily have the best score in GRE. You may not necessarily have like the highest CGPA, but make sure that every other part of your or components of your application is strong enough to be able to tie them all together and sum up all together. I would not say that I was the most exceptional candidate applying to UC Berkeley, but because I had put in all those other either work experience or online call, so the application is like a package with different components. Make sure you're strong in, if not all, most of the components.
Okay. Thank you, Victoria. Let's just give one more person to ask his question. Do we have another person raising hand up in the chat room?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I have my own question.
Please ask a question. Ikechukwu.
Me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just have two questions. I'm sorry, but before I start, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Leshi, for the opportunity, and thank you, Victoria, for this insight. So my question is this: number one is it true that if I have my MSc here in nutrition and when I get over to America for PhDs, I have to start all over again from masters? That is one question. And secondly, for someone like me, from my background is physiology. I have a first degree in physiology from University of Berkeley, and I'm thinking of having my graduate studies in nutrition. So, and sometimes I just feel like even though I actually took interest in physiology when I took nutrition 201 or 202 during my undergraduate days. But so I kind of think I think, okay, this is actually something I would like to go into in projects, which of course I'm doing. But sometimes I feel like I'm kind of should I say disadvantaged, because one, I don't have any I don't really have background experience in nutrition, and now you actually stated that there are a lot of gains, there are a lot of opportunities for one if one really has some internship opportunity. Now, for someone like me now, do you think it's possible for some organization to accept someone with like a physiologist for internship in nutrition in order to advance my career?
Okay, all right. Victoria, before you answer the question, let me quickly come in here that this is one out of 3 sessions that we're going to have. All right. Our next session that is coming up in 2 days' time, we're going to have our friends that are also abroad and are studying PhD. I think they will be able to also further buttress on the first question that you asked. And I'm sure Victoria may also have 1 or 2 things to say in that regard. Just answer those that you can answer, then I can take the rest up in afterwards.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the questions. In response to the first question, obviously I have not started a PhD program yet, so maybe other speakers can shed more light on this. But I would say that for you to apply to a program, just like I mentioned, you should be a good fit. And sometimes the way they determine if you're a good fit or not is the list of courses that you're taking on during your undergrad or your master's program. So if a particular program feels like you have taken all the required classes, or during the course of your program while you're with them, you can't take those required classes, then you can proceed directly to PhD as you would have it. But if they feel like you've missed out on some very important components, and on missing out on some very important components, then they may decide that maybe starting from a master's could be more helpful for you. So I would say that you should confirm that first and not necessarily have it as a hearsay, because it feels like you spoke like people have been saying. No, you rather look at those schools or programs that you are interested in, reach out to them, talk to them about this is your own particular specific situation, and what would they decide based on your background. And also talking about you were in physiology and now you also want to do nutrition. I have taken, so in my cohort or in my class of public health nutrition, some of them didn't necessarily have nutrition for their undergrad. Some of them had social welfare, agriculture, soil science, things like that. But because they are developed interest in nutrition along the line of either the undergraduate study or they took a class or something, and then they were also able to prove that with the work experiences that they had, they were able to get into the program. So it's not a hard and fast rule per se that you must study nutrition. It's possible also to be able to get internship opportunities, just related to your question, that are not in line with what you studied. I would say that you should be able to tell the organizations that you want to work with what your interest areas are. Tell your story, how you develop your interests, what your interest areas are, and what you think you want to do with that. I think it's being able to tell your story in a compelling way that will determine if you are able to get internship opportunity or not.
Yes, thank you so much for that insight. I actually that happened to be my response to that as well. One of the reasons why we are being asked to submit our abstract, I mean our transcript, is for the institution to really know the foundation that you have. So they assess all the courses that you have done and see how much of foundational knowledge have you been able to acquire. And if there's a need for you to audit some courses, then they ask you, they request that you audit those courses. I think the most fundamental thing about it is for you to be able to write a compelling statement of purpose. You should be able to write that. There is nothing wrong in you volunteering. I know quite a number of people that are working in the field of nutrition or that came to study masters in nutrition and they never had nutrition background. But because of their ability to write a compelling story about their journey, and some of them even volunteer, some of them volunteer to work in nutrition-related organizations in order to have exposure that they needed to build their foundation, and they're doing well afterwards. So you don't look at your course, your first degree, as a deficit or as a reason why you cannot proceed. You can, as long as you have interest and you are passionate about it. I know of a professor in the US who studied English as his first degree, English, and then he applied to study MPH. I mean, English is not in science. And then that professor, he applied for MPH, then he proceeded to PhD, then he became a professor. So yours can also be different as well. Thank you so much, Victoria. I think we don't have any hands being raised again. All right. So guys, I appreciate you for staying put. Thank you so much. I want you to do something for me. If you can hear me loud and clear, can you just unmute your mic and then let us give Victoria a round of applause. Let us give Victoria a round of applause for this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you so much.
Hello. Yes, Victoria, you made mention of optimizing our online presence, and then one of our series that we're going to have in the nearest future is titled Optimizing Your Online Presence. Optimizing your online presence is one of the webinar series that is coming up soon. As soon as we are able to finalize the plans, we're also going to announce and then for people to participate. There's going to be more room for discussion on our Telegram page tomorrow. More room for discussion on our Telegram page tomorrow. If you have questions that you want us to address, we'll be available to address your question. Just drop in your question and we'll be able to give more insight. And we'll also be able to use tomorrow to deliberate on the lesson that we have learned at today's session. Thank you so much, Victoria, for your time. We are very, very grateful. We have just about 2 minutes left to end this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Do you have any parting word for us, Victoria?
Well, I will just say there, blossom and thrive wherever you are, because you never can tell what kind of opportunities will open up to you. Also be forward-looking, have insight and foresight. Don't be limited by your environment. Yes, don't be limited by your environment. Believe and know that better things are ahead and walk by faith. God can do greater things in your life. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Victoria, for this insight, for spending your time with us. Thank you very much. I also want to use the opportunity to thank my team. I have quite a number of people, amazing people that are the background making things to work. Thank you so much, guys. I love you. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Today is Monday. Wednesday is another day. All right, where we're going to have another guest that will be willing to share insight with us on their own journey in the field of nutrition. It promises to be great. It promises to be good. Thank you so much, everyone. See you on Wednesday. And at the same time, I look forward to also seeing you tomorrow on our Telegram page. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, everyone. See you. Bye for now.
Thank you.